Hi, it's 6 in the morning and dark outside, and I just woke up. And the kids are fast asleep, and today I'm going to make a soaked granola. What I read about grains is that traditionally they were always soaked, and the soaking process helped break down the grains so they were just easier for your body to digest, would lead to less bloating, higher nutrient absorption. So I went ahead yesterday and I soaked about a cup of oats, which is right here in this bowl. And this has been soaking for about 24 hours. I also went ahead and I soaked about 1 1/4 cups of buckwheat that I got from the bulk section of Whole Foods. And I soaked these as well. And I think with the buckwheat, I could have gotten away with just soaking for 30 minutes, but it was just easier to soak both items in separate bowls for the entire 24 hours. And I did go ahead and add a little bit of apple cider vinegar, just a little tiny bit, maybe about half a teaspoon, to each of these containers. And now I'm soaked, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to make my granola in the oven. And I guess I could have soaked these and just made oatmeal, but not all my kids like oatmeal. They like the crunchiness of cereal, and I often don't buy cereal. And the reason I don't is what I read about cereal is the way that cereal is processed. A very high temperature is used, something that you can't really replicate at home, and that high temperature damages a lot of the nutrients found in the cereal. So that cereal is not exactly healthy food and isn't the best way to start your breakfast, your morning. So I rarely have cereal at my house. I will have an emergency box just in case for those crazy mornings where I don't have time to get everything together. But I do really like making breakfast. So what I'm going to do right now is I have to drain my the water off of these grains, and then I have to make some sort of wet mixture, some sort of binder to bind my oats and my buckwheat, and then I'm going to go ahead and bake that. But before I do that, I have to start with draining. So I'm going to drain using just this metal colander, and then to get rid of all that extra moisture, I have what's called a nut milk bag. It's just a fine mesh bag. You can use something like cheesecloth. I don't, because cheesecloth to me always falls apart. It's just hard to work with. I think this is made out of nylon. This sort of fine mesh is easy to clean and it doesn't fall apart. And it's something that I bought when I used to make nut milks before I found out that my son and I are allergic to nuts. So now I just use it for squeezing liquid out of veggies or grains. So I'm going to go ahead and drain my grains and I'll be right back. Okay, I went ahead and I drained my oats and my buckwheat. I did rinse them out with fresh water, and then I put it in that nut milk bag and I did a good squeeze and I got the mixture fairly dry. And here in this large bowl, I've got my oats and my buckwheat. Now, I need a glue, something that's going to bind this together and make nice little clusters. So, in my fridge, I had a very ripe banana, and I started thinking maybe my oatmeal, or my granola, I should say, will have the flavor of banana bread. So I'm going to mash up this banana with a fork, and I'm going ahead and mashing. And I just bought a new entire container of a good organic maple syrup. So I don't want this to be overly sweet. I don't think that breakfast foods should be crazy sweet, especially since the kids are going to go off to school, and I don't want them acting crazy. So I'm going to first start off with just a 1/4 cup of maple syrup, and let's see if I have enough. If not, I'll open up my new container. No, definitely not enough here. So let's open up the new one. So I've got quarter cup. So let's add all that in. I might need half a cup of maple syrup, but I'm hoping not. So I'm just going to go ahead and mix this up really well. And this is something you can definitely do over the weekend. I don't know why I picked up Friday morning to do this, especially when we have a field trip for my toddler, and I have to go to the DMV to get a new license. But we're going to get it done. Okay, so this looks pretty gluey. And all this is a ripe banana, a super ripe banana that's brown, and maple syrup. That's it. Okay, I do think that I need a little seasoning though. So what I'm probably going to add to this is a little bit of salt. I'm just going to sprinkle to my hands. This much, just a tiny bit. And then let's do some ground cinnamon. I'm going to get a teaspoon. Okay, let's see, 1 teaspoon of cinnamon. If I had some dried ginger powder, I would also add it, but I don't. Cinnamon. And then let's do some vanilla. A teaspoon of vanilla. And then mix this all up. Just mixing. I'm not gonna add any nuts. You could add nuts to yours. I'm not, because of our allergy. The reason that I'm making this instead of buying it is I find that any sort of soaked or sprouted granola cost a fortune at the grocery store, and a lot of times they'll use sunflower seed oil, and we're allergic to sunflower seeds in this house, so I can't really do that. And I like to control my ingredients. I do want really good ingredients, and if I'm going to use an oil, I like to use olive oil. I know coconut oil is also very popular, but my son has a coconut allergy. So I'm going to go ahead and mix all this together and keep my fingers crossed. I've made a buckwheat granola before, but I've never done buckwheat and oats. And when my granola is done, or the very last stage of my granola, maybe the last 10, 15 minutes of cooking, that's when I'll go ahead and add my dried fruit. And my thinking is that fruit is already dry, and there's no reason to dry it out some more in my oven. And what I'm probably going to add is just the dried fruit I have in my pantry, which will probably be a handful of raisins, and my good friend, when I was in the Bay Area, she gave me a bag of delicious dried figs. So I'll probably just take those figs and chop them up. Okay, this looks pretty mixed together and gluey. So I've got this not exactly a baking sheet, but I guess a roasting pan that I lined in foil. And I'm just going to take my olive oil, just drizzle it. I don't want anything sticking. And use my hands, my impeccably clean hands, and just go ahead and spread out that olive oil. And then I'm going to go ahead and spread one layer of this granola onto the baking sheet. My oven has been preheating at 350 for some time now. So I'm just gonna spread this into one thin layer. I'm gonna pop it in the oven, and I'll probably let it cook for maybe about 10 minutes. Come back, break it apart, and keep checking every 5 minutes. I anticipate this will take about 30 minutes to bake. Could be wrong. And at the last 10-15 minutes, I'll go ahead and add my dried fruit, and I'll be back with my hopefully crunchy, delicious granola. So the foil-lined roasting pan was a huge disaster. When I went in after 10 minutes to mix my granola, the foil started ripping, and it's not safe to eat foil in your food. So I went ahead and I took my entire mixture out, put it in a different roasting pan, and no foil this time. So no easy cleanup, but that's okay. So no foil, terrible idea. I'm gonna go ahead and keep mixing up my granola every 5 minutes, and hopefully be ready soon because the kids are about to wake up. Slight problem, it's been 40 minutes and my granola is not done yet, and I have to leave for the DMV and my toddler's field trip. So I turned on my oven, I'm leaving my granola in there, and I'm keep my fingers crossed and hoping for the best. When I come back in a couple of hours, I'll check on it and hope things developed. Hi, so I came home from the field trip and looked inside my oven, and the good news was that my granola had not burned, but it wasn't done yet. So I turned the oven back on to about 350, and I went ahead and I continued baking. And baked for about 10 minutes, and every 5 minutes I stirred it. 10 minutes later, still wasn't done, so I baked for approximately another 10 minutes, stirring every 5 minutes. You would know your granola is done, and because when you look at it, it has this texture. It looks like granola, you know. It's crunchy, it's dry, and my raisins did not get too dried out. They're nice and plump still. So when you're making this, at certain points, you'll think, is this ever going to look like granola? Because it just looks like mushy oatmeal in the oven. And I promise you, it will turn out and it will become granola, but you have to really stay in your kitchen and keep checking to make sure that the granola is done. And this is almost completely cool. It's slightly warm to the touch, but as soon as my granola is done, I'm going to take these empty spaghetti jars and I'm going to fill it up with my own homemade granola. And this didn't cost me very much money, and I got the same results that I would have gotten if I went and I bought any sort of store-made, sprouted, or soaked granola, but I got it at least half the price. So I feel good that I have granola all ready, and the kids will be enjoying this with either some grass-fed milk or some homemade yogurt, maybe parfait style in the morning. So a couple of steps, but really, as long as you do your soaking overnight, it's a pretty easy. I recommend doing this on a weekend and not on a weekday, because if you're busy like me, you may run into the same problem I do. In the morning, you're not done baking your granola and you still have some time more to go. But I'm really happy with the results.